Warning, this podcast contains bizarre, unsettling, and possibly cursed content. We talk about infectious agents, brain-eating, cultural cannibalism, and questionable science. There may be swearing, there may be drug references, there may also be rants. There will definitely be rants. Also, we're weirdly pro-zombie and a little too enthusiastic about the collapse of civilization. Listen with caution, or don't. We're not your mom, unless we are your mom. In which case, sorry. Oh, man.
Weirdly
what if we have like a bunch of
pro-zombie.
kids out there we didn't even know about?
I mean, I think that we would probably know about that.
Welcome to Mutant Hollow, where Stacy doesn't have to raise her own alien baby children.
Focus. So, a prion is just a protein. That's it. End of episode.
Okay. Done. We're done. Mutant Hollow, where speculative science meets the wonderfully weird. Each episode, we ask one big question. Will it zombie? From flesh-eating fungi to brain-hungry viruses, we explore the stranger side of microbiology and what it takes to raise the dead, scientifically speaking. This season, we're digging deep into the real-life infectious agents that can maybe zombify you, your dog, your cousin Jeff, and definitely your government.
Hell yeah.
Today's question, can prions make zombies? These rogue proteins don't even count as being alive, but they can still eat your brain. Literally. We'll explore mad cow disease, brain-eating rituals, and ask the age-old question, why do zombies eat brains anyway? And hey, if you're picturing a zombie cow gnawing its way through a feedlot, yeah, same.
That's good.
There is a story that somebody I know in the agricultural industry was talking about when Mad Cow first came out, and all the farmers were burning down all of the carcasses to try to disinfect the infection or the mad cow disease risk and stuff like that. And then they found out that even after burning, prions are so resistant and hardy that they burn down everything but the prions. Do you think that's true?
It is true. It's fascinating, isn't it?
I love that.
And then if they put more cows in that feedlot but didn't remove all of the dirt and ashes, and a cow happened to eat some grain off of that ash-filled soil, it could ingest the prion and then develop mad cow disease.
I love that. I know anthrax has really hardy spores that are kind of the same way, where they could be living in the soil for dozens of years, and people will try to rotate pasture and grazing area or pens that were infected, and it could be years later and the animal would still get reinfected.
Yeah, and if you bury a cow that died from anthrax, but you don't bury it deep enough, then anybody else that happens to be near that patch of soil is at risk for developing anthrax because of the spores. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Spores.
I love that. Spores. Here's something that I want to ask you, Stacy, because prions are one of the most confusing infectious agents that I have ever encountered in all of my years of microbiology, because viruses are kind of sketchy on the living scale because they require a human host cell to replicate itself. So technically, some people can argue that they're not maybe technically alive on their own. But prions aren't an organism at all. They don't have a cell. They don't use your cell or cells or live within your cellular machinery. Can you explain a little bit about prions and why they're so special, and kind of help us wrap our minds around this whole infectious agent that isn't really an organism at all?
And now a word from our sponsor.
This summer, the infection spreads, and you could be next. Do you have sudden mood swings, an unquenchable thirst for brains, or trouble remembering how doors work? You might be infected with prion fury, the unraveling. My husband said I was acting strange, so I bit him. My symptoms started after I licked a cow skull at Burning Man. Side effects may include spongy brain, random twitching, bleeding from orifices you didn't know you had, full moon transformations, even when not medically supported. But don't panic. Call 1-800-UNDEAD today and claim your free cursed VHS tape, pre-chewed medical alert necklace, and slightly used bite guard. 1-800-UNDEAD. This time, it's contagious. Prions are the ultimate biological paradox, terrifying in their simplicity, unstoppable in their persistence. They are not alive, no DNA, no RNA, just corrupted proteins that infect by example, convincing healthy proteins to misfold like them. What makes them especially disturbing is that they emerge spontaneously in nature, without warning, and can spread silently across individuals, species, and even continents.
They defy the usual laws of biology. Species barriers mean little to them, as we've seen with mad cow disease jumping from cattle to humans or scrapie to lab primates. Their incubation can be decades long and undetectable, making them ticking time bombs buried in the nervous systems of the seemingly healthy. Yet once they erupt, they can bring rapid, gruesome neurological decline within weeks.
Even more chilling, they are nearly indestructible. Fire doesn't kill them, bleach barely slows them down, and they resist radiation and standard sterilization. Once prions contaminate a surface or an ecosystem, they will haunt it indefinitely.
In short, prions are a silent, shape-shifting menace. Unkillable, unpredictable, and capable of lying dormant for a lifetime before unleashing a swift and horrifying end. Too much? I got excited. Okay, so a prion. So prions are a type of protein that cause infectious disease. Now, these are not alive. And everything else that we've talked about as a potential to cause a zombie apocalypse has been a living thing. But it counts sort of because it is tiny and it does affect biology. So we're going to say it's a microbial unit that causes infectious disease.
I mean, protein is microscopic and infectious if it can be passed from one host to another. It's just the weirdest thing, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it totally counts. It totally counts, but it is not alive. If we define life as metabolizing, life as growing, and life as reproduction, it only has one part of that definition of life, reproduction. So the prions replicate themselves by close proximity with a normal protein and then turning that protein into a prion protein, into a pathogenic or infectious protein. So they just sidle up to a normal protein, they squeeze next to it, and that normal protein is like, oh, you look pretty cool. I'm going to start wearing your same goth clothing. And then suddenly you have baby bats everywhere, but they're prion.
That's adorable. Oh my God.
That went haywire. I'm sorry. I don't know where I was going with that.
Can I make one analogy that kind of helps me to describe this to people? Because it's literally one of the most difficult things to wrap your head around. Regular proteins are folded in a certain way, and prion is just a protein that was misfolded. If you envision a basket that was woven, or if you have ever seen like a wicker chair where the materials are woven in and out and crosshatched through each other, they're folded in a certain way where it gives it this structure and it looks flat and smooth and normal after you weave all these fibers together. And when it comes to protein, it's because it encountered another prion or another misfolded protein, and when they get close to each other, one makes the other misfold. It would be the same as if your basket that was woven got damaged on the edges, and you know how it frays a little bit, it starts to fall apart. All of a sudden it gets near another woven basket that makes it go ping, and then it just pops all out of shape and alignment. Proteins make about everything in your body, like skin and tissue and all that stuff. And that kind of it's what holds everything together and gives it structure. And you have beta sheets of proteins in your brain. And when you become exposed to a prion or a misfolded protein, either through contact or ingestion, the proximity of that protein becomes infectious in the sense that that one protein changes the shape of the other protein and all of a sudden causes disease. A misfolded protein is just like any other faulty protein in your body, and so in your brain, when that protein doesn't form correctly, you start to have disease and degradation. Can you go a little bit further into how that is involved and how there's no DNA or replication other than by the folding of the proteins?
Yeah, totally. Like the basket analogy and the wicker analogy, I always also want to throw in the slinky analogy. I don't know, are we too old? Do people still play with slinkies?
Heck yeah, they better.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll just assume that everyone knows what a slinky is. So if you're playing with it and you make it go down the stairs and it does its slinky thing, but then somebody steps on it and squishes those links a little bit, it never slinks appropriately again. That slinky is now a misfolded protein.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the misfolded prion proteins, if they are in close proximity with a normal protein through hydrophobic bonding and a bunch of stuff that I don't understand because I hate physics and chemistry, they will refold the normal protein in their image. So they're a template to misfold the normal protein. It's not something that has to hijack cellular mechanisms and structures like a virus. It's not something that needs to physically take up the space in that cell like fungi. It can just come in contact with the protein and replicate itself by being a template, and all the other proteins around it fold themselves into prions, which is super frightening, especially when you think about how much protein is required in general functions, but especially for neurologic functions.
Right, and that cycle of misfolding leads to plaques in the brain because it causes little pieces of damage in those proteins and little pockets, and the next one infects the next one and misfolds that, and that causes little pieces of brain damage. So then you get neurological disease.
Yeah, it's like they start to clog up the brain with bunches of misfolded proteins. So then the brain's normal metabolism functions, normal signaling functions, normal immune system functions are all affected because those proteins are clogging up the highways. So not only do they replicate crazy easy because they just need to be next to them, but they're also extremely difficult to destroy. You can't use disinfectants because they're not alive and they won't be harmed by a disinfectant. You can't use high heat and pressure like we use for many infectious agents, especially like autoclaving surgical instruments, because they are so hardy in the environment that heat, like burning, does nothing to them, which is really scary.
I know. I love that aspect of it because when we're talking about zombification of an infectious agent of some kind, like prions are so beautiful because they don't have to be modified in any way to transmit. I guess they could transmit, like the transmission could change, but they're so wild, and it's just crazy that they live in the environment for so long. And since, bacteria have a cell wall with like lipopolysaccharide, and so they create this like protective layer. It looks like lollipops kind of facing each other. Anyway, when you introduce a disinfectant, it breaks apart their little lollipop layer, and then all the guts come out of the bacteria when you introduce it or expose it to Lysol or bleach. But a protein is a basic structure that's already in our system. When your skin comes into contact with Lysol, it doesn't break apart necessarily, partly because your proteins remain intact. So the proteins remain in the environment for an extended period of time. And when you hear about mad cow disease and stuff like that, I think it was a significant challenge to dispose of those animals and then try to disinfect, or it's not disinfection, is it? It's an infectious agent, so they're disinfecting an infection. I don't know.
I mean, I guess you could say, yes, it's disinfection of a non-alive infectious agent.
Like, yeah. So what are some of the known prion diseases in mammals and humans that we know about today?
Oh my gosh, there's quite a few. And it's always amazing to me that somebody figured out that these diseases were caused by a misfolded protein. Like, who even goes down that route of hypothetical thinking to figure that out? It's wild. Brilliant. So the first one that we identified as a disease, although it took a really long time to figure out the disease causing agent, but the first one is called scrapie. It's a disease of sheep and goats where they just get profoundly itchy along with their weird neurologic changes. So they call it scrapie because these sheep were actually scraping off all of their hair and the top layers of their skin because they were so itchy. So you would walk up on a herd of sheep and they're just hanging in ribbons, wandering around aimlessly.
Looking like zombies.
Yeah. And doing weird stuff. So they recognized it, I believe, in the 1700s. And then they figured out that it was transmissible, that it could move from sheep to sheep or sheep to goat in the 1800s. That was like crazy that they figured that out. And then the other one that is a big deal from an agricultural or production animal standpoint is mad cow disease or bovine bovine spongiform encephalitis or encephalopathy. That one was identified in the 80s, and then we figured out that it was a prion in the 90s, which is insane that like 30 years ago, we had just figured out mad cow disease.
Isn't that wild?
Then we have, it's crazy, right? Yeah. And then we have things like chronic wasting disease and deer and elk that started in the United States and now has spread to Europe. There's a mink prion disease that causes encephalitis in mink species, so like ferrets and that sort of thing. And then there's human prion diseases like Creutzfeldt Jakob's disease, Kuru.
And Creutzfeldt Jakob disease is known as CJD, and if a human becomes infected by meat that contains mad cow disease or BSE, bovine spongiform encephalitis, the human gets Creutzfeldt Jakob disease, right?
Yeah,
or do they...
but that's true. But the symptoms are similar. So you could see a cow staggering around in the feedlot, and you see a human with CJD staggering around their everyday life.
So, do you want to tell the story of how mad cow disease started spreading in the 80s and why it became so rampant?
Because we couldn't figure it out, or do you want my theory? Do you want my zombie apocalypse theory?
I do want to hear your zombie apocalypse theory, but as far as I understood, it was because they were mixing in brain tissue with the ground beef and other materials in the, to make the meat production a little bit cheaper. They were using every bit of the animal, which included the brain tissue. When that outbreak occurred, it became a widespread scare because so much of the meat was mixed in and blended with everything else. They didn't know which batches were possibly infected with brain tissue and which ones weren't, and they had to cull huge amounts of herds or huge amounts of animals and then dispose of a large number or a large amount of possibly infected meat, because I think there was a huge amount that was potentially contaminated with brain tissue or brain material.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So, and that was when they figured out what BSE actually was, because the human started to get infected, and then they were like, we got to figure out where this is coming from. And they culled most of the herds in the UK because of this. And then they confirmed almost 200,000 infected cattle when they were going through that cull.
And now a word from our sponsor, Bone Meal Basics. Are your cows looking tired? Are your sheep feeling sheepish? Then you need Bone Meal Basics, now with extra spinal cord bits for that prion-rich crunch. Each bag is lovingly rendered from leftovers of your previous herd, making this the most sustainable horror story you can feed your livestock. Wait, this is just ground up Jeff. Exactly. That's Bone Meal Basics. You bring the cattle, we'll bring the doom.
Hey, this is just ground up Jeff. Wow. Poor Jeff.
Ooh, zombacon.
Zombacon. I really liked the zombie one.
Later in the show, Stacy's going to hit us with her best theory for why zombies are obsessed with eating brains. And I know we talked about it last episode, but prion disease is going to have its own special spin. And no, it's not just because they're tasty, so stay tuned. And now for the next segment of our episode, Culture, Ritual, and Brain Banquets. Long before we knew what a prion was, humans were already running into their terrifying effects. One infamous example was Kuru. Practiced by the 4A people of Papua New Guinea, endocannibalism, eating the bodies of deceased relatives, was a sacred ritual of love and grief. Unfortunately, it also transmitted prions through brain tissue. Victims developed tremors, loss of coordination, and eventually died of severe neurodegeneration. Kuru was one of the first clear examples of how prion transmission through ritual, teaching us just how easy it is to spread a brain disease when brains are on the menu. You know the phrase, you are what you eat? Well, what if what you eat could rewrite your brain? In today's culture segment, we're peeling back the veil on the spine-tingling, brain-hungry truth behind prions, those shape-shifting rogue proteins, and how they've haunted real communities, infected folklore, and wormed their way into our cultural nightmares. Let's start with the one that you've probably heard of, Kuru.
Deep in the eastern highlands of Papua New Guinea, the 4A people experienced a mysterious epidemic in the mid-20th century. The people, mostly women and children, were struck by trembling, muscle spasms, uncontrollable laughter, and a creeping madness. Within a year of onset of symptoms, they were dead. It was dubbed the laughing disease or the laughing death. But the cause wasn't a spirit or a curse. It was ritual cannibalism. The Foray people believed consuming the body, especially the brain, of a loved one after death would honor their spirit and keep them close. But that sacred tradition came with an unholy price, kuru, which means fever or shaking in their language. Kuru caused by prions in infected brain tissue, like zombies feasting on gray matter. This ancient funeral rite became an accidental outbreak of neurodegeneration. And once a prion's in you, there's no going back.
But Kuru isn't the only prion-born horror story. Let's cross the globe to check out some prion-laced lore and modern myths that just might have a biological basis.
In North America, in Algonquin legends, the Wendigo is a monstrous spirit born of greed and cannibalism. Those who eat human flesh, even in desperation, are cursed to become a gaunt, ice-hearted creature with an insatiable hunger. Folklorists have speculated this was a cultural warning. Don't eat your kin, or the madness will take you. But some modern theorists wonder, could isolated acts of cannibalism in cold, famine-ravaged areas, like in the 1800s Canadian North, have triggered actual neurologic breakdown? Could prions be the biological ghost behind the Wendigo? Stay tuned, though. We'll talk more about those in a further episode.
And we've already mentioned Scrapey, but in addition to that, there are some rituals and witch trials involved or related to the infection. Before we had mad cows, we had mad sheep, and they might have inspired more than just livestock quarantine. Scrapey is a prion disease in sheep that causes nervous tremors, and yes, the uncontrollable urge to scrape their bodies raw against objects until their wool and skin slough off. In some rural European communities, acting possessed were associated with hexes, bad omens, and even blamed during the witch trials. Imagine it, a field of trembling, shrieking sheep as thunder rolls overhead. Is it a disease or the devil in the barn?
Devil in the barn. And they make us ask one very disturbing question. What if the ancient taboos against cannibalism and food purity weren't just spiritual laws, but biohazard warnings? We'll let you chew on that, just maybe not literally.
Coming up in our next segment, Stacy returns with her theory on how prions could zombify the human brain, and why you should never share chewing gum with a cryptid. Stay tuned, mutants.
Share chewing gum with a cryptid.
I totally would, though. If I ever met, like, Mothman or something like that, I would totally.
Fuck yeah.
So chronic wasting disease is related to these prion diseases that you had mentioned. And one of the things that they tell hunters is you have to remove the head completely and turn it into the wildlife center for testing. And the reason is what?
Oh, I actually don't think that they're doing it anymore because of funding.
Oh, they used to. I guess I'm not much of a hunter, but they were doing that just to make sure that hunters weren't getting exposed to it, right? And then they were also trying to monitor the spread of infection that way.
Yeah. So, like in Oregon, you can get it done, but you have to pay for it. You don't have to get it done. And they usually take the brain and the retropharyngeal lymph nodes, and I think maybe some spinal cord tissue too, to test for the prions. And that's if you're hunting deer or elk.
So if you ate one of those brains, would you become a zombie? Would you get Creutzfeldt Jakob's disease?
Well, that's the crazy thing about prions is right now the route of transmission to humans for zoonotic prion diseases is by eating tissue that contains the protein. So that's how the outbreak happened with mad cow disease. That's what everyone's worried about with chronic wasting disease, since sport hunting and subsistence hunting of wild cervids like deer and elk is pretty popular, especially in the United States. There's a high risk of possible exposure. So I guess you could argue that if you shot a deer with chronic wasting disease, but it wasn't obvious yet in its body, and then you ate its brain, that there is a chance that you will get CJD, which could possibly lead to the zombie apocalypse. I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable line of rationale.
Heck yeah, because it infects the brains, you eat the brains, you then want to eat more brains, but you're dead. Undead. It's like the perfect setup.
I really wanted to start singing that Bauhaus song.
Let's hear it.
Bela Lugosi's dead. Undead. So we talked about the animal diseases, scrapie in sheep, mad cow or BSC in cattle, chronic wasting disease in hoof wildlife, mink encephalitis, which I think is really fascinating. And those flavors of critters and the human versions, not only can we get it from eating neuro tissue from other animals that have some sort of prion disease, we can also get it from each other. And we know that because of a particular now gone set of humans in Papua New Guinea that as part of their death rituals and their funeral customs, they would eat as a group or as a family, they would eat the remains of their loved one after they had died. So cannibalism is one of the transmission routes for prion neurologic diseases in humans. And according to Wikipedia, I love this. According to Wikipedia, to prevent prion disease in humans, it says prevention, refrain from cannibalism.
I mean, technically, you can still be a cannibal and be safe as long as you don't eat brains or brain-contaminated tissues, right?
Well, no. You just don't eat each other unless it's like a desperate survival situation.
What if you avoid the entire spinal cord as well?
What about the big nerves, right? Like, I mean, you could argue that nerves, like the radial nerve and the femoral nerve and the vagus nerve, have enough nerve tissue to harbor prion protein plaques, especially in advanced illness. And it's really hard to divorce meat that you want to eat from neurologic tissue that you want to avoid when you're eating Aunt Sally.
Did you say Aunt Sally?
Yeah, Aunt Sally.
Oh, Aunt Sally. Oh, God. They were eating their family members. So was this like to honor, they were just honoring their dead loved ones? Yeah, exactly. It was a funeral ritual associated with honoring ancestors and trying to keep your deceased loved ones with you, right? And there's lots of cultures that have done something like this. Maybe not eating the whole person, but like blood rituals or that sort of thing. Eating hair clippings. Gross. Wow, pretty intense.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness those people were doing that and got infected and taught us that it does cause transmission, and they can warn the next group of people that potentially would have been family brains, and it's
a super interesting story how people figured out that was what was causing the illness. So many humans in the tribe had this really strange neurologic illness, and it happened later in life. So for humans, and specifically with this particular type of prion disease, it's called Kuru, which incidentally there's also a shoe company that markets really heavily called Kuru, and whenever I see their shoes I just start laughing because I don't think that they did their research when they were naming their shoe brand.
Brilliant.
Because I don't want to buy Kuru. Maybe they should sponsor us. Kuru, would you like to sponsor us?
Yeah, maybe it's a good idea. Maybe they're really good shoes. They're good cannibal shoes.
So some humans that were doing human things like trying to convert other cultures to organized religion happened to notice that many people in the tribe would exhibit this slow progression of weakness, inability to stand, muscle incoordination, and creepily enough, weird symptom where they would just bust out into hysterical laughter, just randomly, and would have a really hard time stopping laughing. They called it the laughing disease. And they figured out that the people that had these symptoms were people that had participated in their ritual cannibalism of their deceased family members, but sometimes like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years before. And as that ritual cannibalism became less and less in fashion, less and less people started to exhibit the laughing illness signs.
Wow, that's actually pretty interesting.
There's a cool documentary on it. They have footage of the actual humans that were experiencing Kuru symptoms, and they had some interviews with the anthropologists and the missionaries that happened to notice the disease. It's really interesting.
So is the tribe now gone because of Kuru?
No, I think that it was a combination of factors. They were quite a small tribe, and I think that they just got integrated into the other populations in the area. Yeah, they didn't all
have Kuru laughing sickness. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I love my favorite people, but not enough to eat them unless I have absolutely no other choice. And they pre-authorize the eating.
That's not weird to say. Would you avoid the brain and spinal cord and nerve tissue as much as possible if you had to?
I guess it depends on how hungry I am and how bad the apocalypse is. Because if it's going to take 50 years for me to get symptoms of Kuru and I'm unlikely to live that long because of a horrible apocalypse, then I would probably have a tasty brain.
Oh my god, that's some sound logic right there.
It seems reasonable. Seems like straight up Indiana Jones monkey brain. I would do it.
Wow, that's intense. Do you think they're
What about you?
delicious?
I mean, I bet they are. Well, let's see. Have I ever eaten a brain? I don't think I have. Have you?
No.
Would you?
Where would I get one of those? I don't think so. I don't know.
I can get you a brain, dude.
Like an edible one that you
I can
know
get
for
you a
sure
brain.
doesn't have any kind of prion diseases.
Well,
that's
we
fresh
haven't-
and delicious.
We haven't proven any in like bird species, so we could get you a chicken brain.
Yeah, nope.
That's a no.
Nope.
Okay. All right. I support you in that.
Thanks.
You know, to each their own.
Oh man, that's pretty gnarly. Okay, so they're kind of like real-life zombies because their speech and cognitive function is affected, their motor coordination, their ability to walk straight, and things like that.
They also had emotional degradation, so they wouldn't respond to emotional stimuli in the same manner as someone who was unaffected.
Really? Just like a real-life zombie without the biting. I wonder if they got aggressive.
There's no reports of like that as a primary symptom, at least in the short bit of research that I did. No, actually, I've been into this Kuru cannibalism thing for a while. You know, I have some weird interests, and there's been some fairly well documented incidents of cannibalism throughout history, right? Because, you know, humans do some stuff and they go some places that maybe they shouldn't go, and they get into situations that get them into trouble, and cannibalism is often a result of that.
You mean like plane crashes in the snowy mountain ranges and things like that?
Yeah. Or like exploring the North Pole and getting locked into ice for 8 months and needing to find sustenance some way. Or colonizing small islands in the Americas and then not understanding how to survive without grains. And then everybody starts to die and then they gnaw upon each other. Did you see that? Oh my gosh, how long ago? It was a pretty recent article about, was it Jamestown? I think it was Jamestown. There was a colony that fell upon hard times and they resorted to cannibalism. And we recently figured out how one of the victims was killed and eaten, and were able to reconstruct what they looked like based upon the skull fragments left over.
Oh, man. So I know eventually this will come full circle because there is a live, healthy person eating brains, and then they get infected with something that then makes them act and distribute symptoms or signs of some sort of zombified infection or zombified symptoms or zombified disease. And I really don't know if it's too early to ask this question, but what would it take to go full circle and have that infected person then want to eat more brains? I'm sure they did multiple times over their lifetime for the cannibals and stuff like that anyway. But is there a type of prion disease, or could there be one with a certain mutation that would then cause the host of the infection to then crave more brains?
I'm gonna go with maybe. And the way that I could work my mind around it is because there's quite a bit of neuronal tissue in the back of the mouth, the oropharynx. There's lots of nerves there. Also in the GI tract, there's tons of nerves there. So since this is an oral infection route for humans from other animals and from other humans, there's an argument that the prion proteins will at some point be associated with the oral mucosa. Right? So like your gums and your tongue and the back of your throat, the inside of your mouth and throat. So I could argue that a person with a zombie form of prion infection would have a large protein burden of the misfolded prion proteins, not only in their neurologic tissue, but perhaps also in their immune tissue in the mouth, their lymphoid tissue in the mouth. And so if you're biting, similar to rabies, you have direct access of that misfolded protein to nerve tissue and maybe even the bloodstream from the bite itself. And that could, in theory, lead to a direct infection, not from the victim's oral route, but from the attacker's oral route, delivering it to the victim.
Boom. So that is a mechanism of transmission.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Brilliant. I love it. Brilliant. Would there be an advantage for the misfolded protein to replicate itself, or it's not exactly replicating itself, but to continue its infectivity aside from the transmission route, instead of having some sort of will or creating the will to transmit further prion infection?
That's where it gets really scary to me, because we can attribute most living things to have some sort of awareness and some sort of consciousness. I won't say that everything is sentient, but we're learning more and more that living things are interacting with their environment in a directed manner. So for living things, you could make the philosophical jump that they have a drive to reproduce, to infect, transmit, right? The horrifying thing about these infectious proteins is there's no will and there's no death. You can't kill them. There's no way to kill them. They have the ability to be practically indestructible. So shall we say, if they were alive, they might be immortal. There's no drive, right? Which means if there's no drive, then there's no avoidance of noxious stimuli. Which means it doesn't matter if they get into one thing, like the McDonald's hamburger, then the whole world is infected with Kuru.
Whoa.
Sorry, Mickey D's. It's horrifying that this is something that is so not alive. And if it's not alive, that means that we can't kill it, and it's harder to fight it.
Prions are so weird, and it's really hard to hypothesize its motivation and drive. And I know that like a fungus or a virus doesn't have technically... oh gosh, it's so hard to say it has the motivation and drive to transmit and reinfect and to continue its infection, because that's how the adaptation and evolution works. That's how like reproduction happens across every being on the planet. But this isn't a being. It's not a living thing. It's not an organism, so it's really hard to hypothesize a drive for furthering its species if it doesn't have a species.
Yeah, so it's more of a perfect storm scenario rather than an evolutionary scenario, right?
I mean, it's got some powerful strengths though, because if it's drawn and it doesn't have a tropism exactly, but it resides in neurological tissue, and eating of neurological tissue and cannibalism and with mad cow and chronic wasting disease, it happens. There are hunters, we eat meat. It's just a part of life and culture. And even like the sheep's head, like those are eaten all the time pretty regularly too. So all it has to do is increase its ability to spread more quickly or cause symptoms faster. But I don't know, if its host died, it wouldn't care because it's not alive either. So it's not like a living virus that's trying to not be too lethal. But it's just hard to say what types of mutations would even take place, because it can't mutate, right? It's a misfolded protein, but it's adapted over time. Like it exists. How did it even get here? How did this even happen?
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know if any of us know. But other than structures can change and inanimate objects change over time because of entropy, and we know that proteins can change over time because of entropy or because their production goes wrong based upon genetic coding. But there's no mutation, there's no adaptation, there's no reproduction, there's just templated refolding, there's no metabolism. None of the criteria of life work for this particular infectious protein. And that means that there's no way that we can truly relate to it, which makes it a really scary monster.
Right. That's pretty terrifying. I think when everybody at one point was questioning their hamburger and they had to get rid of it disrupted the food supply. It disrupted people's lives. I'm sure it made meat incredibly expensive because they had to call so many animals, and they were able to get a hold of it eventually. But like you said, it may have been a trial and error thing when had a new set of cattle in the same stockyard, but they didn't remove enough of the soil and found out that the prions could be living at a certain depth in the soil and the animals could be re-exposed that way.
Well, and then you have to think about how that must have put an immense amount of pressure on the system to actually perform that culling. Like, how do you destroy that many animals in a as humane as possible manner, and then also destroy their remains in a safe manner when you're trying to avoid something that you don't understand or even have identified. And then you come to find out that it is extremely hardy and all of your efforts may have been futile.
Hell yeah. I don't know. That's pretty freaking dope.
I like it. I like Prions. Of all the things that we've discussing, this is the one that's scariest to me.
Really?
Yeah.
6 pieces for the recipe for a pandemic: infectivity, resilience, mutation, zoonotic transmission, neurological symptoms, fatality.
I mean, pretty much it's all of those things.
Yeah, but how does it, if it can't change and evolve over time, how does it evolve or change or mutate or...
It doesn't have to. The only way that we can be saved is by our bodies evolving, mutating to be resistant to that abnormal folding.
So, what if there was a global meat shortage and cannibalism just exploded and we had no choice but to start eating humans, and then prion disease just ran rampant throughout the entire world? That would be the way that would happen.
Yeah, was Mad Max? I think it was Mad Max. Was it Mad Max? They were eating no. Oh my god, I'm thinking of it. Book of Eli. That's it. Yeah, and they come across the people that are setting the trap, but they're all like shaky. They're gonna eat. I'm sure it was Book of Eli. God, I love dystopian fiction.
I mean, all it would take is one little stint of desperation, of hunger, of the disruption of the food chain or food supply for whatever reason. It could be, it starts with bird flu, and, infectious organisms are very adaptable. And if any other part of the cows or pork or beef were also disrupted, I don't know. You never know when desperation might occur. So maybe the way that this infection zombie potential wins or humanity loses is by any kind of environmental or behavioral change where we resort to cannibalism as a survival mechanism, or say the food supply got contaminated but we could not afford to call them. What if meat or protein was so hard to find? It could take a plague or any kind of environmental event or whatever it takes, but if the food supply chain was disrupted and we were forced into some sort of cannibalism or eating livestock that could potentially be infected or affected by prion disease, but we had no choice. We couldn't call them because we needed that meat so bad. We could be forced into a situation where this could spread unchecked throughout humanity, and it would wipe us out so quickly.
Well, it takes a really long time to develop disease, like years. So
in all cases, what about mad cow?
Typically, yeah, it's not like a super quick thing. Typically, it takes some time
so
because
like
you have to.
Into the apocalypse, we're all dead.
Yeah, or we don't even know that it's the apocalypse. There's one global event. It lasts for a short period of time, but we have to resort to eating meat that has prion contamination, but none of us know it. And then 20 years later, an entire generation exhibits severe neurologic degenerative disorder, goes crazy, and then kills everyone else.
There you go. That's pretty wild.
It's all speculation. So once upon a time, before mad cow disease made the headlines, there was an idea. It wasn't a good idea, but it was definitely an efficient one. Dead cows, particularly dairy cows, were rendered into protein feed rather than destroyed. And that protein feed was fed back to other cattle, dairy cows, meat cattle, baby cows. The beef was raised on beef protein. The dairy cows were raised on cow protein. And in that rendered protein sludge, there were prions, the misshapen proteins that don't die in heat, with bleach or with time. I mean, it's Soylent Green. It's super efficient. Recycle the proteins, right? Don't we always say that? Recycle the proteins? They were just trying to recycle the proteins.
You don't want to let the animal go to waste. I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not going to feed it to a human because we are picky about that sort of thing. So what do you do with it? You don't want to waste them. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that bad of an idea to me, if we take out the infectious disease component.
Here's the thing. Once we learned about the infectious disease component, you think this practice would have ended or changed in some hugely significant way. And they did make some changes to the livestock feeding process, but they didn't remove it altogether. Let's talk about that a little bit, shall we?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because this shit freaks me out.
And I agree. And I like it. I mean, I like it because it's fucking cool.
Fuck yeah, it is.
It's wildly cool. It's wildly cool.
Okay, let me get comfy because we're about to tell a story.
Get comfy. Get ready for this. Get ready for this.
Okay. Before entire herds were culled, before the world recognized what was happening, dead cows were fed to living cows, not once, not twice, but again and again. And thus, the first modern foodborne zombie disease outbreak, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or mad cow disease, a disease where your brain becomes a sponge, holes, terror, death, no cure, no mercy. Not to be sensationalist or anything.
Drama, clickbait.
But for real, this shit freaky, right?
Yeah, this freaky. No, you're right. So they banned it, right? We banned the practice?
You would
Stop
think.
feeding brain and spinal tissue to cows?
You would think. But there's a catch. There's the loophole, the horror that might still be unfolding. The ban only applies to cows.
What about pigs and chickens?
They're still being fed rendered animal proteins in many parts of the world right now, including possibly brain matter. Isn't that crazy? Why?
That's wild.
Why?
Because
I guess
pigs and chickens are not ruminants. No,
yeah,
you.
I guess there is an answer, but that's illusion.
Because the pigs and the chickens are not ruminant. They don't chew cud. So the rules don't apply, which means a pig can be fed a cow. A chicken can be fed a pig. A pig can be fed a cannibal loops again.
Crazy that this
a chicken can be fed a chicken. Insane.
And they have a justification for it. And I think the justification is fairly sound, right? If you don't have any scientific evidence or a history of something bad happening when you do these things, even though it's eerily similar to a horrible mad cow outbreak that has left ripples throughout humanity for decades, you would think. And like, I can understand that they have a bottom line and you don't want to wreck your bottom line based on a hypothesis or a potential reality, but there is a possibility.
And there's so many humans that need fed. There's a lot of us that need fed.
Yeah, but this is where our window is. This is our window of possibility to a zombie apocalypse. This is it.
This is Will It Zombie in a nutshell.
Yeah, if you were a betting man, you should bet on this one, right?
I mean, I'm betting on this one. This is the one that I'm betting on for shizzle. For real.
For shizzle. Okay, will you give us the science behind it?
Yeah, so here's the science. Scrapie, the sheep version of mad cow, has never been found in pigs in the wild. Okay. But in the lab, pigs can be infected with Scrapie if you inject it directly into their brain, or if you feed them huge doses of the proteins. They don't get sick, they don't develop symptoms, but after years, you might find those prion proteins in their tissue. So let's get speculative, shall we? What if pigs are asymptomatic carriers? What if they harbor prions without showing symptoms? What if we're already eating them? And what if one day one prion changes just enough to jump the species barrier again? Oh, no.
But can I just make a historical reminder here that the whole mad cow thing happened because of Scrapie, because not only were they feeding them recycled dairy cow, but also Scrapie infected sheep, which I think is how a lot of the outbreaks first started, was they were feeding bone meal and sheep into the livestock population as well.
So sheep are going to kill us all? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, at this point, they've found it in so many different species, and they've found transmission from so many different avenues at this point that it seems kind of ridiculous to think that this could not happen or jump species barrier, or that pigs aren't an asymptomatic carrier at this point. And I think we're going to talk about it, but they have done studies with the pigs, and it's not good. It's not great.
It's not good. It's just not good.
Shit. These people, it's crazy. Okay, so it's not just cows. Let's talk about people. In the 1980s, children with dwarfism were treated with growth hormone, not synthetic. This came from the pituitary glands of cadavers. Those glands, some of them carried prions. In over 200 people, children developed Creutzfeldt Jakob Disease. They got brain rot as a side effect of their medicine, and some showed symptoms in their 30s, others much younger.
Yikes.
Isn't that crazy? There were so many people affected.
Just in the 80s.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. In one experiment recounted in the book Deadly Feasts, which we recommend reading, brain tissue preserved in formaldehyde for 7 years, 7 years, was still infectious. A scientist placed a sliver of that brain into a chimpanzee, and a year later, that chimp's brain was melting from within. Prions don't die. Also,
how cool is that?
Testing, another issue.
Yeah, whole other issue.
Prions don't die. Formaldehyde.
Prions
that was a
don't
deeply pickled
die.
Goonies never die. Prions never die. God,
So
nerdy.
fucking metal.
Crazy.
Okay, Stacy, what about the chicken nuggets?
Chicken nuggets. So you're saying, it's okay. I'm just gonna eat chicken. Fine, I'm gonna eat chicken. But are you? If prions jump from sheep to cows, and from cows to humans, why do we think chickens are safe? What if poultry are harboring silent, undetected prions incubating? Just because a creature doesn't show signs doesn't mean it's not infected. Bird brains are structured differently. They might not develop symptoms the way that mammals do. Do you know what mammals eat chicken? Humans.
I'm a humans. And also, the whole theory with rabies where chickens can't get it because they have incredible immunoglobulins and stuff like that. The prion disease is a non-inflammatory disease, so your stellar immune system, your chicken, ain't going to help you with this one.
Non-inflammatory.
Guess what I'm going to say next?
What?
The porkpocalypse.
Porkpocalypse. That's a good word.
Okay, so imagine a prion that's made the jump to pigs, and it doesn't kill them, but it lodges itself in its muscle tissue. The chops, the sausage, the bacon, you eat it, it survives in your stomach acid, it crosses your gut barrier, it gets into your blood and your spinal cord and your brain, and not tomorrow and not next week, but 20 years from now, you start dropping things, forgetting names and hallucinating. You fall into madness, and in the final moments of lucidity, you realize you were infected by a pork chop.
Zombie apocalypse.
Zombie apocalypse.
It's revenge, right? It's pig revenge for all the bacon.
Yeah. Okay, but can you just give the humans a little bit of assuredness with regulations? We're safe, pretty much. Right?
Yeah. We're quote unquote safe. Air quote. The USDA and the FDA regulations do prohibit feeding ruminant proteins to ruminants. They recommend against high-risk materials going into other feeds. So no transmissible spongiform encephalopathies have ever been naturally confirmed in pigs or poultry. But science moves slowly. Prions move slowly. And the disease is already in the future by the time we find it.
Word. Pigs can get it in a laboratory setting or in experimental laboratory settings, and I think that's wild because they're still eating potentially prion-infected materials and brain matter and bone meal.
Ugh.
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy.
They can get
definitely it. Zombieing. Yes. Like I'm getting some major zombie vibes from this. It's giving zombie. Isn't that what the kids say these days?
Oh, you said it! I'm so proud of you. Say it again.
4 episodes.
It's giving zombie apocalypse. Anyway, super freaky. They say it's safe. They say we learned our lesson, but if prions taught us anything, it's that nature doesn't forget. And sometimes what we bury, what we boil, and what we render into meal and call safe comes back. Not as a ghost, but as a whisper in the meat, a memory in the marrow. The hunger that waits. I love it.
Drama much?
If there is anything I feel completely justified in being completely sensational about for a zombie apocalypse pathogen, it's this one. Don't you?
Oh, hell yeah. I'm right there with you. Yeah. Be afraid. This episode of Mutant Hollow was inspired by current prion research with the CDC, USDA, and emerging studies. Also in part by Deadly Feasts, written by Richard Rhodes. For references and extended sources, visit our Patreon or our website. Eat smart and stay weird.
Yeah, and become a breatharian.
Breatharianism! Way of the future. Nobody's safe.
Yep, haha.
This is some good shit. Ugh. Some creepy good shit.
Okay, so here's a real-life horror story of how prions spread throughout the body. We often think of prions as a brain-only problem, these malformed proteins turning brain tissue into Swiss cheese, but the reality is even more sinister. Prions don't just stay in the brain, they spread and replicate in many tissues throughout the body. In variant CJD, for example, scientists have found infectious prions in the spleen, tonsils, and lymph nodes, even lurking in muscles and organs far from the brain. And to me, this is a very important tidbit of information because if you, like me, were thinking at some point earlier in the episode that we're safe because we don't eat brains anymore, or if we don't participate in cannibalism. However, we do eat meat, and if one of our feed livestock animals became infected and it adapted into the muscles and organs, which are far from the brain, this, I think, is a scary way for a potential apocalypse type scenario to happen. So early research once assumed that sporadic CJD was confined to the brain, but newer studies detected prion infectivity in a wide variety of peripheral tissues in these patients. This means a prion-infected individual is a walking reservoir of contamination. the disease might start in one place, but like a malevolent force, it colonizes the body. Brain, immune system, gut, blood. Nowhere is truly safe.
So think about it. An infected person's spleen or kidney or even a chunk of muscle can harbor the lethal seed of prion disease. Doctors have been alarmed to find high levels of prions in lymphoid tissues of CJD patients, and even sporadic CJD cases show prions outside the brain when highly sensitive tests are used. It upends what we thought we knew. Prions can silently infiltrate the peripheral organs, replicating under the radar. This raises terrifying questions. Could routine surgeries or organ transplants unwittingly transfer these hidden prions? Could an infected spleen or blood donation transmit the disease even if the donor never shows neurologic symptoms? Unfortunately, the answer appears to be perhaps, and that is a nightmare fuel for surgeons and patients alike.
So, if it's not just brains and meat can harbor prions, that creates a terrifying potential horror scenario. Remember how we comforted ourselves that only brains or nervous tissue were dangerous to eat? If we avoided things like cow brain or spinal cord, we'd be safe from mad cow disease? Think again. Scientists discovered that in some animals, prion invade beyond the brain, including muscle meat. And in deer afflicted with chronic wasting disease, or CWD, for example, infectious prions were found in the animal's muscles. So in the very flesh of the animal that carried the disease, in lab tests, muscle from CWD-infected deer was able to transmit prion disease to other animals. This means that a hunter's venison, steak, or jerky coming from a sick deer could be laced with invisible and destructible pathogens. It's no longer just about eating brains. Any part of the infected animal might doom you.
Picture that. You sit down to a meal of meat, and hidden inside are prions that could turn your brain to mush. You'd never know by the taste or the smell. We always thought prion diseases like Kuru were a cannibal's curse, brain-eating tribes, that kind of thing, but now we learn even plain muscle can be dangerous. In fact, prions have been detected in blood, saliva, and even animal droppings in diseases like chronic wasting disease. It's everywhere. The rules of the game have changed. Avoiding brain soup isn't enough when a roast or a steak might carry the same deadly prion. Health officials are deeply worried. Although no human cases of CWD have been confirmed yet, experiments show primates can get prion disease from eating infected deer meat. It's a real-life horror scenario, a contagion that can jump species via a dinner plate without us even realizing until years later when the victim's mind disintegrates.
So here's a scenario to chill any meat eater's blood. What if the pigs we raise for food are harboring prions under our noses? Pigs rarely live more than 6 to 8 months before slaughter, which is far too short to ever show signs of slow incubating prion disease. But just because they don't show symptoms doesn't mean they can't carry the infectious agent. Scientists worry that pigs might be a silent and understudied carrier of prions. In experiments, researchers have managed to infect pigs with BSE or mad cow prions by injecting them directly into the pig's body or brain, and those pigs did get prion disease. The only saving grace was that when the pigs were simply fed BSE-infected feed, they seemed resistant to oral infection. But here's the rub. Resistance isn't immunity. It might just be that prions replicate so slowly in pigs that we never detect them in time. So if a pig did contract a prion disease, it would likely be slaughtered for pork before it went mad, and that tainted pork could enter the food chain, potentially.
It's the perfect Trojan horse scenario. Pigs generally haven't shown prion diseases in the field. There's no hog version of mad cow outbreaks, leading some to think that they're naturally resistant. But resistant isn't invincible. Researchers indicate that pig prion protein can misfold under the right conditions. It's just harder to get it started. So what happens if prions find a way? The pig could carry the infection without anyone knowing, since it wouldn't live long enough to stumble and drool like a mad cow. Every part of that asymptomatic pig could be infected. Muscle, blood, organs, and we'd merrily turn it into bacon and pork chops. It's a frightening unknown. Some epidemiologists have even speculated links between pork consumption and neurologic illnesses in humans, wondering if undetected prions play a role. While that remains unproven, the very thought is enough to make you eye your next ham sandwich with suspicion. Could prion disease already be on our plates, hiding in plain sight? It's a question too ghastly to ignore, and it drives home one final point. When it comes to prions, what we don't know might hurt us in ways we're only beginning to fathom.
That shit's terrifying.
Yikes. I know, right?
Stay calm. Freaked out. You stay calm, but I'm freaked out too.
Are you gonna have bacon for breakfast tomorrow?
Fuck yeah.
The following content is based on real research, eerie case studies, and is heavy on the speculative science. While we love a good zombie tale, some of what you're about to hear isn't fiction, it's just deeply unsettling. Listener discretion is advised, and as always, don't panic. Lots of it is speculative.
Please don't panic. In 2013, scientists in some unnamed country examined over 32,000 appendix samples from routine surgeries and found something bone-chilling. Roughly 1 in 2,000 people, that's nearly 30,000 people, were silently carrying the prion responsible for the variant of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD, the human form of mad cow disease. So they're carrying it without symptoms, and some of these people already had the misfolded proteins in their tissues, but they hadn't developed symptoms yet. And what's worse is scientists warn that these dormant infections could take decades to erupt, up to 50 years later, meaning that even though the mad cow outbreak looks like it ended in the early 2000s, it could still be lurking inside of people living today. So it's not just a historical tragedy, it's ongoing, and there is a silent epidemic with a grotesquely long fuse where people at some point in the next few decades might be going through a rash of dementia-like symptoms. Okay, so here's a little story. It may or may not be fictional. It may or may not be real, but it's real. I don't want to alarm anyone. Here's a story called The Hidden Horrors of Prions. Ticking time bombs on planet Earth. Imagine walking around with a deadly disease incubating in your body, quietly ticking away like a time bomb. In one particular part of the world, this nightmare might actually be reality for tens of thousands of people. Decades after the mad cow disease scandal, around 32,000 people in certain parts of the world are now thought to carry the rogue prion protein that causes Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD. These unfortunate souls are infected but symptomless, and potentially for 50 years or more, and never suspecting the microscopic terror lurking within. Each one is a potential CJD victim in waiting, for their fate is uncertain, and during this long, silent incubation period, they could even spread the infection unknowingly through blood donations or surgical instruments. It's a chilling thought, seemingly healthy people harboring a brain-destroying agent that could strike without warning, leaving their brains riddled with holes like a sponge, and invariably leading to death.
That's horrifying. Walking time bombs. All those carriers who ate contaminated beef in the 80s and 90s, and even today no one can tell who they are. There's no cure for CJD, and by the time symptoms appear, it's too late. The disease can lie dormant for decades, quietly converting normal proteins in the body into deadly prion. Experts say many infected people's timers are still ticking, with incubation periods potentially exceeding half a century. It's a macabre legacy of the mad cow era, one that might still erupt into tragedy. The scariest part? There's no suspected cases right now, but carriers could spark new outbreaks at any time. It's like living atop a volcano that could erupt with an epidemic of brain-wasting illness. Sleep well, random place in the world, ...
The terrifying part of this is, just like they mentioned with the surgical equipment and things like that, you say that prions have a detriment in some way by having such a long incubation time, but what if that 50-year time frame for 32,000 people in some part of the world are sharing surgical equipment and other things, and they're doing the proper disinfection procedures, and they're spreading it from person to person with equipment and things like that that are disinfected in a way that bacteria and viruses don't transfer, but then maybe this number is growing just because...
I mean, it must be growing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has to be.
Because of the incubation time. What if in 50 more years, maybe hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people have been exposed by then?
Yeah.
And prions can be pretty adaptable, so you don't know how it's adapting to different host species, or if these people are pet owners and maybe their pets are being exposed and then the pets are then transmitting prion to other animals. Wildlife, what if you have a pet cat and, then you have a rodent problem in your house, and then those rodents are indoor, outdoor, and then they go outside, and if it started transmitting in urine or feces or something like that, then the wild animal population could be exposing untold numbers too, right?
Untold numbers.
Don't you think?
That a lot. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could logically, I think it's far-fetched, but I think you could logically talk your way around it.
Even though it's far-fetched, I think the reality of tens of thousands of people currently being like carriers of the disease, and then they, some of these people may be facing disease in the future and you don't know who they're possibly spreading prion to right now, is kind of terrifying.
That part is freaky as fuck.
Freaky as fuck. Every time somebody says, oh, mad cow happened in the 80s, it's happening right now. it's not done yet.
So now-ish until the 2050s. See, that's why we are just so close to a zombie apocalypse with prions, because all it has to do is change a little bit how it affects these brains. Instead of dementia-like signs, hyper-aggression, destruction, rage signs, and then we've got a whole population of people that are like sleeper agents for the zombie apocalypse, and then suddenly switch 30,000 of them. I mean, that's a pretty good pandemic start. 30,000 people within a span of a year or two of each other start to develop zombie-like symptoms and then start to spread it around. It's just too slow, though. That's the downfall of this particular infectious agent, is the onset of signs is slow. So it's hard to overtake an entire species with a slow change like that.
I think there is a way. Life will find a way.
Life find a way.
I think that this is insidious. And also, prions have an amazing ability to adapt to different host species. They can jump to different types of animals, and they can adapt to different tissue types too, which is pretty terrifying, because if it turns out that there is a silent pandemic building right now in, say, our feed livestock, and it's ending up in muscle tissue, and we won't know about it for a few years. This is how a zombie apocalypse happens, is a mass number of people are exposed, and it has to hit and reach a huge amount of people before anyone realizes it. And then all of a sudden, when you're showing symptoms or weird signs of aggression, or even just that weird laughing disease or whatever it is, and it mutates from species to species or from tissue to tissue type, it's already found to be adaptable in ways that we find terrifying. It's only a matter of time before it can adapt in a way that it becomes person-to-person transmission without having to do any kind of ingestion necessarily, or endocannibalism. This is an off-the-wall thing, but if there was some sort of reason why we're eating infected meat, we already talked about the scenario where if there was a meat shortage and humanity was low on protein and we didn't have a choice, and we were saying, oh, we might not have symptoms for a few decades, we're going to do it anyway. But what if it did cause behavior in a way that was aggressive enough to fight another person? I think that's kind of off the wall, but still, you never know. This stuff is very unpredictable.
Unpredictable at its finest.
Hell yeah.
Did you see the Book of Eli?
No, you mentioned that in another segment of the episode, and you said they were eating people, or what happened with that?
Yeah, but they were shaking. So there's cannibals that ambush people in this post-apocalyptic world. But you can see the director had the actors that played the cannibals be like very shaky, and they had abnormal body movements, and they were acting a little bit weird. So it was like they were implying symptoms of Kuru from the cannibals that are eating. It was really good.
Oh, wow. Okay, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Yes. Also, let's say that we are making a recipe for a pandemic. Can you tell me, in relation to prions, how pandemic recipe ingredients fit in with prion disease? Because I feel like it's challenging for a non-organism to meet these criteria, but you're telling me that prion disease is a really good zombification candidate. I just feel like this is hard because prions don't really mutate, do they?
No, but they don't need to, right? So those criteria are for a pandemic or a plague related to a living organism that's causing the disease, right? So we can just kick mutation out of it, but we could still use all the other criteria for this non-living infectious disease, right?
Oh.
Like infectivity, it's pretty damn infective. If it happens to be next to a normal protein, it's going to turn it into a prion protein and lead to disease. So it just has to be in proximity. Really resilient, right? Can't kill it.
It's very resilient. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's extremely difficult to destroy through normal means.
The remaining ingredients, I think you touched on one or two, but transmission, infectivity, severity, lethality, resilience. Go.
Okay, so for prions, if we're thinking about transmission, infectivity, severity, lethality, we're going to pop mutation to the wayside for now. And resilience, they are really easy to transmit through oral route. And for humans, that is ingesting these particular abnormal proteins, the prion proteins. So for transmission, it's arguably really easy for these prion proteins to get into our industrial food system. And many humans have access to prion-contaminated food, which could easily lead to an outbreak of a prion disease. So I think that it definitely ticks the transmission box. For infectivity, yeah, I mean, I think that that also is high on the list of strengths for prion disease to become a zombie apocalypse. Because if you have any prion protein exposed to any normal protein, it's going to refold the normal protein into a prion protein. So it has a high infectious risk just by exposure. For severity, that one is a little bit, I think that we would need to bump up the immediate severity of the disease for it to really hit zombie apocalypse markers. As although it becomes severe and is 100% lethal, it takes too long to become severe. And then that leads into lethality. It is 100% lethal, but it takes too long. So there's a chance that we might be able to figure out a way to block those prions from misfolding normal proteins. I think we have a bit of a chance of figuring this out if it takes too long to cause a pandemic. But it really does meet the resiliency of the infectious component. I mean, you can't easily get rid of this. Cooking does no good at all. Disinfectants do no good at all. Many of our normal surgical sterilization techniques do no good at all. So it's extremely resilient in the environment and the tissues in infected individuals. So I'd say it's like probably one of the best on the resiliency scale. So when it comes to mutation, we can't really use that part of our pandemic possibility scale because it's a protein that's not going to mutate. It's not alive to mutate, but we could have random events of another wrong folding that makes it even more dramatically infective, so that not only just getting stuck in brain tissue could affect other body systems, or our behavior or our physiology might mutate to make us more exquisitely sensitive to this particular infectious agent. So if we come in contact with it, we might see faster onset of symptoms. Instead of 10 to 50 years, it might be just days to weeks. And we might see more dramatic behavior changes in those that are infected. Instead of perhaps just incoordination and neurologic changes, we might see hyperaggression and heightened fight reflex. So there's a possibility that we could mutate to make a prion zombie apocalypse more likely.
I think that that's a fantastic synopsis of the different pandemic ingredients. And this, I don't know, prions are just so strange and unusual and so unlike all of the other infectious diseases. But that leaves a lot of window of opportunity too, because we don't know why the first prion protein was misfolded. We don't know exactly when that happened or how. So we don't know how to prevent it from happening again in a different way or a different host species or in a different protein type. So if one changed where it was in the mucous membranes, for example, and we can cough and sneeze it, and people inhaled that misfolded protein and it misfolded the proteins in your mucous membranes and became an aerosol transmission, I think this could very quickly and easily become a problem. I think that as far as the mutation limitations go, we don't know what it's capable of, and we don't know why it happened or how we can prevent it from happening again. And evolutionarily speaking, it could be in the works right now. So that's an unknown, but a scary one. And as far as resilience goes, if this did become something where it was transmitted via the aerosol route very quickly and easily and was able to spread all over surfaces of everything that we were breathing on, and then we couldn't destroy it and it would be everywhere, accumulating all of the time, we would be toast. So even if it did take a long time from transmission and infectivity to the severity, which takes a number of years, we would be toast. It would only be a matter of time before everybody was infected. And so that also again comes back to a dependency on human cellular changes and mutations or adaptations. And maybe one of the adaptations that we make is when we get a misfolded protein or a prion infection, maybe it kills some of our cells, or maybe it loses functionality. So maybe our skin cells lose functionality, or some of our brain cells in our frontal lobe lose functionality. And we start to appear like a zombie. We lose like structural integrity of our epidermis and we look like we're rotting. Or maybe we don't speak anymore or lose emotional function, just like the Creutzfeldt disease. And this is a beautiful way or transition into us mutating as some sort of defense mechanism against prion infection that turns us into zombies where it keeps us alive just enough to continue transmission. But as a survival mechanism, we're still operating, but our body is degrading. Our brain is degrading. Our cognitive functions are damaged, but we are still continuing on because our body's trying to adapt to the misfolding proteins of maybe the proteins in our skin or different parts of the brain or like the motor cortex and things like that. So I think maybe I'm starting to understand your viewpoint on this being an incredible zombification potential.
Yeah, and it may not be what we would consider the quote-unquote classic undead, reanimated corpse zombie, but the fact that a non-living thing, like a prion protein, can dramatically change the behavior and functioning of a living thing, like a person or an animal, so that they no longer work the same way that they used to and no longer interact with the world and the environment the way that they used to, is terribly frightening.
I love it. This is a good one. It's just kind of hard to wrap your head around a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's hard to, the word I'm looking for, I don't want to just say understand, but it's hard to articulate how frightening an infectious protein truly is.
And we never know when it's going to change or when another one is going to form or develop. There have been a number of different ones in different host species over time. We never really know.
And the fact that you can, as a human, get sick from one that is primarily found in cows or primarily found in sheep or primarily found in hoof stock, like cervids, wildlife. And we come in contact with those species all the time through our food system. And we didn't even know that this was happening for a really long time. 200 years, right? 1700s when they first figured it out in sheep. We knew something was wrong, but we didn't know what it was.
Pretty wild. I think it would take one change in one type of misfolded protein. That would be maybe a protein in the skin, for example. And let's say, or the muscle tissue, because we commonly eat muscle tissue all the time without even thinking about it. Like most people don't necessarily eat a lot of brains anymore, but muscle tissue is consumed almost every single day in a lot of major parts of the world. So what if it was something that a protein that had changed in muscle tissue and people are eating their burgers and their steaks and their chicken and whatever kind of meat proteins, and that would spread so quickly, especially if it took a couple of months to start developing symptoms. And it can't, then at that point, it can't be destroyed. So by the time a couple months go by, that gives it a really great opportunity to spread widely without anyone knowing about it. And it's all over the place, and millions of people are becoming exposed because of that time frame. And then all of a sudden, people start getting sick. You try to disinfect and clean and remove and destroy and burn everything that it came into contact with, and by then it would be too late.
Yeah, way too late. Especially if we got into the poultry industrial food system.
Yeah, that would be wild. And I don't know enough about it to know if that would or would not be possible, but I'm assuming it would.
I mean, it's more of a mammal thing that we know of right now. I don't know if we know of any prion diseases that affect avian species.
Never say never.
Really
what
scary.
about?
I know.
What about beef? A lot of the world eats beef.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean the beef and the cows and sheep and all of those domestic animals. And what if it got into pigs too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If our food domesticated animals had a serious outbreak that was crossing species and was proven to be zoonotic, then it seems like that would be a very rational scenario for the beginning of a zombie apocalypse.
Hell yeah.
And how creepy would it be if all the zombies were running around laughing at you while
like Kuru?
Yeah. We thought running zombies were scary. Can you think about running, laughing zombies?
No freaking way.
Oh my god.
That would be terrifying.
That's some creepy shit right there.
So in Zombie 101 physiology, behavioral changes is one of like the hallmarks of zombification, and that laughing sickness would be a terrifying one. And then they also currently, they do have a loss of higher cognition. They have emotional changes. So far, there isn't a lot of reported cases of aggression necessarily due to infection, although I feel like if you had some kind of brain damage or limited cognition, you would probably most likely become more apt to become aggressive than a non-infected person, which would increase transmission rates from person to person. So the first transmission would be, for example, contaminated meat supply, livestock host becomes zoonotic from livestock to human through consumption. And then it would be transmitted then because anything it comes into contact with can transfer the misfolded protein. So then human to human transmission. And if one of the behavioral changes is aggression that would increase transmission rates. And the last hallmark of Zombie 101 physiology is a craving for human flesh or brains. And I'm always curious and excited to hear your theories on what the evolutionary advantage would be to doing that, because it seems counterintuitive from a transmission standpoint. But there's always a reason and there's always a way. And each organism or infectious disease is going to have a different reason or evolutionary advantage to it.
Yeah. But this one, hypothesizing an evolutionary advantage is difficult because it's not something that is acted upon by evolution directly, since it's not alive.
I mean, there could be external factors that are pushing that to happen, though, even though the agent itself doesn't have an evolutionary drive to replicate itself, reproduce, or to mutate and change. There is a reason why it occurred the first time, even if it was a mistake, like a misfolded protein mistake or error that was so infectious that it continued and became a problem. There's something that caused it to happen. And since we don't know what that reason was or impetus, then we don't know how to prevent it from happening again. So it may just be a matter of time.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I really liked your discussion of an environmental event or crisis that led to humanity having to utilize production species that might be infected, even if we knew that they were infected, for our immediate food needs. That kind of environmental pressure, like radiation can degrade proteins, could lead to a change in a misfolded prion to make it target areas of nervous tissue that directly inhibit aggressive behavior. Yes, you could argue that.
So like even just a nuclear attack, even just a small one in some part of the world, and people were exposed to radiation and they had some kind of mutagenicity or damage to cellular structure and proteins, and they can develop their own misfolded protein. And also that this is twofold, because if there was a nuclear attack and our food supply was disrupted and we couldn't call thousands of animals, even though if that happened right now, the meat would be more costly and more expensive, we can still afford to do that. And it's happening all the time. They call animal species for infections and other reasons all the time. But what if we couldn't afford to? What if there was so little food supply on the planet that they couldn't afford to get rid of them and you just had to take the risk and consume that possibly prion-infected animal and hope for the best? And like you said, if you were in a zombie apocalypse and you had the opportunity to eat some brains for sustenance and you're dying of starvation, you would take that risk because you don't think you'd be alive in 20, 30, 40 years anyway. So maybe people would be willing to take the risk, and we don't always know how much time we have until symptoms start to develop.
Man, I can't even go skipping lunch. Like, I think that I would be one of those people that would be like, I'm starving, I'm going to eat that poor, sad human brain.
Oh my gosh. Same, I guess. I don't know if I would resort immediately to brains, but I also don't like skipping lunch, so.
Yeah.
We're in the Hungry Girls Club.
Yeah, that's it. That's a club. I like that.
Okay. And now for today's episode, Will It Zombie Prion Edition, Stacy's Brain Buffet Hypothesis. So far, we followed the twisted trails of prions, from tribal funeral rites to cursed venison jerky, through sacred taboos, twitching sheep, and a molecular villain that can't be killed, cured, or cooked away. Now we're asking the question you've all been thinking. What happens if this real-life horror show evolves? What if those misfolded proteins stop lurking quietly in the shadows and instead get smarter? What if they cross the species barrier, mutate for faster transmission, and finally rewire the brain in a way that doesn't kill us, but keeps us walking, staggering, snarling, searching for brains, not out of hunger, but because the prion itself demands it? In this segment, our resident creature Dr. Stacy unveils her most terrifying theory yet, how prions could become the ultimate brain-hopping pathogen, and whether we've already seen the first signs. Buckle up, mutants, it's time to pass the cranial hors d'oeuvres and listen closely, because Stacy's about to serve you a hot plate of speculative science we're calling the Brain Buffet Hypothesis, and trust us, you're going to want to stay for dessert.
So, prions are my favorite possible zombie apocalypse origin. And there's some precedence in the zombie canon for prions being the origin of the zombie apocalypse. The Zombieland movies have, well, I guess they imply that it's a prion, mad cow derivative type of zombie apocalypse. And I think that actually is a weirdly reasonable possible hypothesis because of the way our food production systems are, especially in countries like the United States and Canada and a lot of the European countries, and now even in places like India. We're moving from a small local farm system where all of your meat is grown, raised, slaughtered, and eaten in the same geographical area to these huge worldwide production systems where we're shipping beef to China and we're shipping beef to other countries, and other countries are shipping their beef to us. When you get into that kind of a food system where there's millions of animals packed together, we're breeding particular strains that make lots of muscle tissue, that make good marbling, but maybe aren't as hardy or resistant because we don't expect them to live very long because we're going to eat them soon. We're slaughtering them all in these huge processing facilities where you do your very best to limit tissue contaminations between animals. You do your very best to limit biohazard exposure for the humans that are working in those processing facilities, but it can't be perfect because of the volume. When you have that huge volume, you have a huge risk for, especially an infectious disease that can't be destroyed, to take over within that food system. And by the time we realize it, as demonstrated in the UK mad cow outbreak in the 80s, 90s, once we realized it, significant damage has already been done. So my general hypothesis for zombie apocalypse based upon a prion disease follows some of that zombie canon that we all know and love when we're thinking about zombie fiction.
And can you tell the backstory in Zombieland about how the infection started or how they implied that it was a prion disease?
To spoil it, but if you remember in the beginning of the movie, there's a dude eating a hamburger and then there's a zombie apocalypse. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. We're looking at processed food, fast food, large production food systems as our origin. It's really, if you haven't seen Zombieland, it's very entertaining.
Heck yeah. As far as zombification potential goes, prions do make an excellent one because if there is a delay, the amount of time that it takes to show symptoms, I think, is a strength for the zombification theory, just because, let's say it took a couple of weeks. The amount of people that would be consuming this contaminated meat could reach a significant number of people. And then if it can transmit from person to person subsequently, like they already exist and they've been acknowledged or known about for hundreds of years, and anything can happen that can create another one that could be very successful.
I definitely agree with that. And it doesn't even have to accelerate its timeline, right? What if a whole generation of humans was exposed to an infectious prion protein through our food system, and then 10 years later, everybody suddenly develops a zombie neurodegenerative disorder? You have a whole generation of humans in a short period of time developing symptoms far removed from when they were actually infected, which makes it even harder to figure out what is going on. And if everybody started to become affected in the same 2-week time frame, then they could wipe out the rest of the normal humans like that.
And it could be happening right now. We could be on year 9 of those 10 years. And sometime in the next few months, you'll start seeing people developing atypical dementia symptoms or something like that. You see more and more people going into nursing homes earlier and earlier, but nobody's going to be alerted to a problem until we reach a certain number of people and alerts the medical community that something odd is happening, and it has to be significant enough for scientists to take note and look into it.
Exactly. If we're thinking about why a prion-infected zombie would choose to search out uninfected humans to bite them, I don't know if ascribe a motivation to an inanimate object like a protein, but I do have a theory. I
would love to hear it.
Are you familiar with stereotypical behaviors, especially in animal and human behavior science?
No.
Stereotypical behavior is something that an animal or a human does over and over and over again that may not actually lead to a resolution or a particular target. So the example that a lot of people use is the tiger in the zoo that's just pacing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in the front of its enclosure over and over and over again with no obvious motivation and no obvious goal to that behavior. So stereotypical behavior. And we know that in some humans that have neurodegenerative disorders, and in fact have prion neurodegenerative disorders, one of the signs that we can see is an overabundance of stereotypical behaviors, like a certain twitch or picking one part of their skin or a movement of their head that's just over and over and over again. So my theory about why prion zombies could bite is related to neurodegeneration leading to stereotypical behaviors. Because most prion disease is oral route infection, and we know that the prions will aggregate in lymphoid tissue, especially in the mouth and the gut, before it migrates to the brain. There is an idea that maybe people that are infected with a zombie prion have a higher prion load in their oral tissue, and the areas of the brain that are targeted towards food and biting might be overrepresented with aggregation, because that's where the infection happens, through the feeding centers, through the oral mucosa, through eating those proteins. So if that then translates to a stereotypical behavior where all they want to do is eat or bite, it could be the reason why zombies will chase, eat, and bite non-infected humans.
Whoa, okay, that's a beautiful theory. I love that. Prions that exist in brain and neurological tissue, and the parts of the brain that are affected are the ones that may be responsible for the oral fixation. And there is an association where if you're eating infected or contaminated material, and then you have an oral fixation or stereotypical behavior because you have all this protein activity in that part of the brain that's overactive, then your body is simply going to tell you, just from your brain signals, that you want to chomp or bite another being or any kind of other tissue. And that oral fixation leads to contamination of and transmission of the next person. What would be the mechanism of action or transmission from biting from one host to another, since you technically ingested contaminated material initially to become infected? How would the following group of people become infected or affected? The next set of people, say there's a group of vegans and vegetarians and the original source was contaminated meat. How does that next group of people become affected?
I think the vegans are going to be safe in their bunker. So the moral of the story is become vegan to avoid the zombie apocalypse? Is that what we're saying?
Huh. I mean, if it was a prion zombie apocalypse, maybe that would help, yeah.
It might help, yeah. So my thought is, because you just need you need one prion, you need one misfolded protein to convert your proteins into more prions. And we know that prion proteins, at least in some part of the infection, are present in the oral mucosa and oral lymphoid tissue. It would be more of a direct contact with that abnormal protein through the bite from the infected's mouth into the uninfected human system. And then that protein goes crazy and starts to misfold all of the normal proteins in that newly infected human, and the cycle continues.
Perfect. And it doesn't even have to be oral consumption, because if for whatever reason there was a change either in the prion infectious agent, or if there was a change in human anatomy, like a nuclear or radiation exposure, a nuclear attack, and it caused people to have misfolded proteins in their mucosa sinuses, in their nasal mucosa, and it became an aerosol transmission, that can be inhaled by another person. So it doesn't have to be oral transmission, and it doesn't have to be associated with meat or eating or the food chain or food supply or livestock like it has in the past, but they're a little bit different every time. And so maybe the next one could be a misfolded protein in the sinus cavity. And that would create a perfect storm for an aerosol transmission from person to person through simple coughing and sneezing. And by that point, we would be toast.
Coughing and sneezing is such a beautiful route for the zombie apocalypse. And if we can rationalize many of our possible zombie pathogens into becoming aerosolized or to be infectious through the respiratory system, then it makes it a lot easier to contemplate how those pathogens could become a zombie zombie pandemic.
As far as transmission goes, the aerosol route doesn't have a lot of disadvantages, except for if human behavior changed and everybody wore a mask all the time. There are certain cultures that wear masks regularly anytime they have any kind of symptoms. And if the whole world was like that, or if this particular pathogen started in a country where everybody uses a mask and protects against oral or aerosol transmission, then it wouldn't be the most successful in that part of the world. So it would have to be a perfect storm where you have the right conditions and it's like a Goldilocks zone of lethality, and the route of transmission is dependent upon the culture of that particular country where it originated. And maybe things like this happen all the time, but they didn't have the other conditions meet up with the ones that were available. It all depends on how it's transmitted, how lethal it is, what country of origin it starts out at, who patient zero is, and what the cultural normatives are before we can determine if it's successful. But with any pathogen, you're going to have a perfect score where all of the conditions are right, and that could potentially bring you to a zombie apocalypse, which it can happen with any organism at any time, and it could be, have already started right now. But the aerosol transmission component does seem to be one of the key components of all of these, where it would make it easier to spread, for sure.
We can still rationalize other transmission routes could be effective.
I mean, this one is the perfect one for oral transmission because everybody eats food.
Everybody eats food, right? And it's so hardy in the environment. You don't even necessarily have to eat meat that's contaminated. That field that you're getting your vegetable or your grain from could have been fertilized with blood meal or bone meal that's contaminated with neuronal tissue that has those prion proteins in it, since you can't really destroy them.
Right, that's an excellent point. So it can even be passed through fruits, vegetables, grain, your garden, any kind of mass agricultural usage, anything that they do alternate crops where they allow cattle to graze, and then that simultaneously gets rid of some of the old detritus and maybe helps fertilize, and then they grow a new crop the following year. And if prion disease does take years for detection, that would be one beautiful way where those animals contaminated the soil, there was a crop that was grown, and then that agricultural field was distributed throughout a significant part of the world and then consumed by a large number of people. And
food
even
is
if
dangerous.
It's blended, food is dangerous. Maybe instead of becoming vegan, you should become like an aeritarian.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the breatharian, is that what they were called?
Yeah, something like that.
Breatharian? Yeah. I mean, you could do it, but you could only do it for a little while.
Do you think the brain craving could be a biological drive to spread the infection more efficiently?
I don't know. So, do you really want me to get into the zombies eating brains thing?
Yes, always.
Okay, so I think that if the only way that you can classify something as a zombie is if they eat brains intentionally to spread the zombie virus or zombie pathogen, I think that you are limiting the length and breadth of the beauty of a zombie apocalypse. I think we need to broaden our definition. I think a zombie qualifies if you look mostly dead, you are dead, or you're just crazy, and you're eating other humans that were initially alive and aren't consenting. I should throw that out there. Non-consenting humans. You don't have to be dead to be a zombie, and you don't have to just survive off of brains, right? If we're thinking about all of the zombie fiction, all of the zombie folklore, those aren't themes worldwide. Sure, Night of the Living Dead. Okay, that's fine. But there's such a bigger zombie world out there. Why limit ourselves where we have to eat brains and we must be dead?
Okay, that's totally fair, Stacey. I'm going to agree with you. But first of all, I'm going to say I like that you add the consenting thing because we were just talking about Sasquatch eating me in exchange for a selfie. But my next question is, in Zombieland in particular, where they had the prion hypothesis, did the zombies eat brains in that movie?
No, they just ate all of the human.
Oh. So maybe
it wasn't targeted just for a brain. And Walking Dead, they don't, no. They just eat the human.
There we go. Maybe we can change our working speculative science and hypotheses to go away from brain eating, since you already came up with some really beautiful, eloquent theories, and those would apply in any situation or any cultural reference where the consumption of brains take place, but it doesn't always. So we can always speculate why muscle tissue, why eat humans. And I think that could be just simply because if there is some sort of natural impetus for transmission from the infectious agent affecting the brain and behavior of the human that's infected, it's going to be drawn to other humans instead of, traditional foodstuffs anyway, because you can't transmit the zombie virus to a banana, even though that would be kind of cool. So they're probably just more attracted to stimuli from human voices or just human interactions. And that in general would lead to attacking another human or muscle tissue. But there have been plenty of cultural references where they also eat the deer and other mammals and stuff too.
Yeah. In most of our modern zombie fiction, nothing alive is safe, right? It doesn't just mean that you're going to get eaten you're only going to eat other living humans.
Right. But I think prion disease would be the perfect example of a reason why the zombie would not have a brain-eating hypothesis that would have to explain the lack of drive for transmission or an alternate theory, because since the prions aren't a living organism, this may be the perfect case to hypothesize the oral fixation, how their brain was damaged through the infection, and they just had a stereotypical oral fixation, and that's why they want to bite or chew, but it has nothing to do with a desire necessarily to transmit. And maybe they are looking for nutrients in human tissues and things like that, or there is some sort of drive to have your protein come in contact with another human protein. But maybe the behavioral modification for this one is more in line with dementia symptoms and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I think for this particular one.
Cool. I like that. You're broadening the zombie horizons, Stacey.
That's what I like to do. Broaden apocalypse horizons.
Okay, here's my speculative science moment. Let's say prion-based zombie disease emerges in factory farm cattle. Ground beef carries prions into the food supply. It's not properly cooked. It spreads fast. Actually, it could be cooked and it wouldn't matter. No symptoms for years, and then bam, mass neurodegeneration. But what if that disease wants to spread via bite? What if it accumulates in salivary glands or in nerves near the mouth? What if it drives aggression and biting as a transmission route? Now imagine millions of infected people compelled to bite, brains full of indestructible proteins. They're walking, they're twitching, they're craving the one thing that they've lost, their mind. For our Will It Zombie Prion edition, what's your verdict, Stacey? Prions are technically not alive. They're practically unstoppable. They're already halfway to being a zombie or creating a zombie. Do they check all the boxes? Do they need more mutations? What kind of mutations would that be? Or one bad burger? Tell me what you think.
I think one bad burger will do us all in. I'm going to give Prions an 8.5.
For real?
Yeah. They're my favorite.
Oh my gosh, I never expected to hear anything above a 6-ish from you.
And you probably won't. Again,
Tell me why. Really? Tell me why you love prions so much and you think that they have such great potential for zombification.
I think that they can sneakily get into us and we don't even know it. I think that they cause some really frightening disease symptoms and neurodegeneration right now. I think the fact that many mammal species are affected by prion diseases means that they could be ubiquitous and we don't even know it. And we can't kill them. We can't fight them. We can't sometimes even realize that they're in the environment. I think it's really good stuff.
Wow. I love that. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with prions now, and I'm going to make my Will It Zombie score 9.5. But hear me out. It's because I'm more optimistic than you are. I feel like I'm a little bit more open-minded to scientific speculation because I feel like anything can happen at any time. And I'm not sure what my score was before you explained yours, but if you're this optimistic about if prions can zombify Will It Zombie scale, I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
They're pretty freaking scary, dude.
Frick yeah. May zombie help us all. May dog help us all.
May dog help us. May Sasquatch help us all.
And then eat us.
And then eat us for a selfie.
You can't destroy them. You can't cook them. You can't even tell they're in your food. Sleep well tonight, and remember, your brain is not on the menu yet. And that's it for this episode of Mutant Hollow. Be sure to join us next week when we dive into a real-life parasitic zombie that infects snails. Yes, snails. They climb to the top of grass blades and pulse like disco balls until birds eat them. It's cute. It's horrifying. It's science. It's also a little bit gross.
Like, follow, subscribe, or the prions win. Rate us 5 stars, or we'll send a zombie cow to your backyard. From all of us at Mutant Hollow, remember, science is weird, your meat might be cursed, and we love you. Bye!
Bye! Okay, but I love the idea of a zombie cow, but I really did until you told me that they actually bite you and can break skin.
On that note, it's my bedtime.
Same.
Real perky. We're going to end it on a real perky note.
Fuck yeah.
I was going to say, can we make zombie banana plushies? I want one.
That'd be adorable.
I want a zombie banana stuffy. No, I'm muting myself.
I will pee my pants. Oh. Okay. Now I feel so lonely. I'm all by myself and no one wants me. I'm all by myself.
Rate us 5 stars or we'll send a zombie cow to your backyard.
That would be so cute.
Woo, okay.
Because how cute would it be to have a little zombie that can't bite you or hurt you?
Well, do you remember Walking Dead when Michonne took the jaws off of her boys? I would totally do that.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this kind of shit a lot, dude.
That's true.
I could just see myself as one of those New York dog walkers that have like 15 different dogs of all different sizes and they're just scooting around on the sidewalk. That, but with zombies.
Oh, hell yeah. I love that. I could see that for you too, Stacy.
Mm-hmm. Just navigating the wasteland with a pack of 15 jawless zombies of all different shapes and sizes. Everybody has a collar. Everybody's microchipped, so in case they wander off, I can find them.
Oh, yeah, because you don't want anybody to steal them.
Right, especially when they're dressed up all nice. Somebody's gonna want my zombies.
Okay, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Yes. Also, let's say...
Mosquitoes with a vendetta?
Mosquitoes with a vendetta?
I'm starving. I'm gonna eat that poor, sad human brain.
Same, I guess. I don't know if I would resort immediately to brains, but I don't. I also don't like skipping lunch, so...
Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty much just gonna be Shane and Lisa, so... I'm just kidding.
Be warned. Beware. The path ahead. Sorry. Goonies never die.
Porkpocalypse.
Porkpocalypse. Oh, hey. The money shot.
Oh my god.
This is some good shit. Ugh. Some creepy good shit. Gruesome.
Even more chilling.
Gruesome.
What?
Did I overdo gruesome? I like that word.
Never
overdo good word.
Gruesome. That was romantic.
It was romantic. Thank you for that. Unleashing a swift and horrifying end. Too much. I got excited.
And they turn your brain into sponge.
Sponge brain.
I think it needs a little bit more flair. Fuck yeah. Whispers from the meat recall. Science might... Oh, let it also...
Nobody.
Oh no. Yep, this is already going great. If you can
What
hear
is that
me.
line from The Princess Bride?
My name is Indigo
The Pit of
Matoya.
Despair?
You killed my father. Prepare to die. Sorry, what?
No. Well, yes. But the Pit of Despair guy.
We're not your therapist. You are. We're... Oh no, give me the giggles. Stacy!
Sorry.
Okay. Dr. Voice. I love
Near and
rabies
dear.
too, and also prions.
We can love multiple things.
We can love multiple infectious agents, Stacy.
Wait.
Yeah.
Don't panic. Bring your towel.
Yeah, that. Thanks for all the fish.
Thank God you got it. I'm so glad. I was worried. I was worried I threw that out there and it wasn't going to land.
I got
Thank
you.
you. Amber, you're so cool. Really?
Oh, man.
I had to do some deep breathing while I was waiting for you to throw that one back
I
at
was
me.
like, what's the beginning part? But it's so long, and thanks for all the fish.
I mean, that's all you needed.
It took me a minute.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You just made my day. I love you so much right now. I really, really love how you gently direct me. Like, if you feel like you want to do this, it's a thing that you can do. When really I know that you're like, shut the fuck up, bitch. Mute yourself.
I asked you not to drink water while you were talking earlier, and you're like, don't tell me what to do! So, I might be a little gun-shy and terrified of you.
So now you're gonna handle me gently. Okay, I've been handled.
Plus,
I'm
you're
muting
fucking
myself. Are you ready?
terrifying. Like, the last time we talked, you were like, do you want a brain? I can get you a brain. I was like, all right.
That's terrifying.
Shit.
I can get you a brain right now, actually.
Yeah, that's weird.
I've been watching this documentary. Have you seen The Mortician?
No?
Oh my god, this is so entertaining.
What is it?
He was collecting body parts. And do you remember the Carolina Biological Supply Company? Did you ever look at those catalogs when you were a kid? I still look at them now. And that you want like all of the dead animals that they can provide. Mom, can I have this frog in a jar? Can I have this human skull? And she was like, no.
Beetles.
Can I encourage you, just like you encourage me to mute myself when I'm being obnoxious, can I encourage you not to use a glue trap?
Yes. For spiders?
Okay. For anything at all. Don't use them.
Okay.
They're horrible.
What is the
Did
tick?
you know
Okay.
that 70% of the world insect population are at extreme risk for extinction? 70%.
That's a lot, but I hope all the ones in my house will die.
Nope. Just let them be. Let them do their thing. Nope. No glue trap. You know how many
Okay.
birds and small mammals I've had to try to extricate out of a glue trap?
That sounds
Or the
horrible.
ones
How do you
that
get a
have
bird
died
under your
horribly.
bed?
Good point. Probably unlikely under your bed. Good point. But still, save the bug. Damn the man, save the bug.
Okay, I'll consider it.
You'll consider it? Okay.
I have a thing about
Take it.
parasites and bugs.
I know.
Parasitic
And everyone
bugs.
will know soon, too.
Oh, shit. How long have we been on this tangent? Okay, I'm getting back on track.
You want to know the only ethical way? Well, I shouldn't say that. You want to know the most humane way right now that we have to kill rodents?
To set my house on fire?
I was thinking snap trap.
Those are
Yeah,
the legitest? Those are the most legitness?
those are the most legitness. But if
I
you
do
want to
have those
be
too.
really careful about controlling your rodent populations, they have rat and mouse birth control bait now, which is what I use at my house. My God, I do love any paragraph that starts with the word promiscuous.
I knew you
That
would.
does make me happy. We're proving all kinds of sentience, which means that we as the humans have an even higher responsibility to manage our behavior and protect everything that's alive around us, which we don't do a good job of. in
Facts.
general. Yeah, sorry.
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 Bye.
I love rats. I used to
Rats
cuddle
are
with
great.
my rat waffles.
Oh my God, they're so cool.
You know.
They're like tiny, tiny dogs.
Okay, you did another Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference.
I know, I'm sorry.
You're pretty cute. Okay,
Get your blanket.
if you're a normal, then bring your blanket. If you're not a normal, and you do intergalactic travel, then always bring a towel.
Oh my God, okay, I'm so ready. Surprise me!
It's a surprise.
Making weird noise?
I mean, how many brains have you eaten?
Who knows? Are we talking vertebrate or invertebrate brains?
I want to know about all of the brains that you've eaten ever.
Oh no. Have you ever cracked an oyster and slurped that bad boy
What?
right on down? Wait, I like my brunch with a side of danger. Can you make its voice like the computer in Star Trek? Could I say computer and then it listens to me and I ask it a question and then it tells me the answer in the Star Trek computer? I'm on board. I'm in.
That
I'm in.
was your hang up? Like, it wasn't about AI taking over the world or using your data against you and all that shit and privacy?
Well, there's those things. And, there's the Skynet component to it, which I'm cool with any kind of end of the world scenario. So while I find it deeply distressing, I'm also on board. But if we could make it Star Trek-y, I've been waiting my entire life not only for an apocalypse of whatever flavor, primarily zombie, but also I've been waiting for a Star Trek universe, so that just generally a human system that is Star Trek oriented.
What the fuck?
What? Why do you say it like that?
So this whole time you've been talking shit about AI is because you think that they may or may not do the fucking Star Trek computer voice?
Yeah. If it does the Star Trek computer voice, and if I say computer, they would say computer.
Oh my god.
And then she would say, oh my God, talk to me. Are you still here? Help!
Oh.
Holodeck program.
Oh.
Oh, hi. I was just talking to you.
Oh!
No, but it has to be a particular computer. It has to be the computer Star Trek Next Gen. Maybe you could ask her, please emulate the Enterprise C. Okay, so one of my favorite episodes of the show Supernatural. Do you watch that show? You know
Oh,
which
he's
one I'm
saying,
talking about.
I'm dead. I always thought I'm dead. I'm dead.
Mind blown.
Dumb.
Now you feel smarter.
Yeah, now I do feel smarter than I was before when I was dumber.
Undead. Share chewing gum with a cryptid.
I totally would, though. If I ever met Mothman or something like that, I would totally.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Or like Sasquatch.
Fuck yeah. I mean, if I ran into a Sasquatch when I was out mushroom hunting, I don't think that it could get any better. I think that would be every life goal accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be amazing. I would definitely want to befriend that creature so badly.
And if they ate me, that's cool. I don't mind. What a way to go.
If I got a selfie first, I would welcome the eating, but I need to prove it.
You would pay them in your body for a selfie?
I mean, if they're going to eat me either way, I'm not exactly exchanging the selfie. That's a prerequisite. Would be all. I wouldn't mind being the hiker that finds that too. And then if I'm the only picture of a selfie with a Sasquatch.
I mean, wow. That is social media gold.
Let's work on that.
Dying by Sasquatch.
Or just a selfie with one.
Okay. You won't even puke when you're listening to Mutant Hollow.
Epic. Ready,
I don't have
set,
a drug
go.
problem. But I think it's extra funny because we should know.
Yeah, we should definitely know. But what if we didn't, though?
I mean, what if we didn't? You're right. You're right. What if in a drug-induced haze we carried a child to full term and then gave it up?
What if somebody stole one of your eggs, dude?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like straight up zombie style. Wait, no, that's aliens. Aliens steal your eggs.
Yep.
Like X-Files, right? Didn't they grow a weird baby in Scully?
Yes, they totally
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could have alien babies out there right now. You wouldn't even know it.
I mean, every time you go to the doctor, they're stealing something from you. Don't trust them.
I think every time you have like one of those sleep paralysis dreams, it could be aliens and they're harvesting your eggs and then they're making like little Stacy babies out in outer space somewhere.
I mean, good on them, I guess. At least I don't have to raise them.
In which case, buckle up, sweetie.
Good. Buckle up, sweetie. Let's crack some skulls and find out.
I like that. It's cute.
Why does this keep happening?
Loud?
Ah!
It sounds like you're screaming from really far away.
What the fuck? I was screaming into the void. Okay, I'm going to turn my microphone off and I'm going to turn it back on.
I'm still laughing about you screaming into the void.
When in doubt, turn it on and turn it back off. Wait, turn it off and turn it back on. How's that?
Yeah. Okay, we'll roll with it.
No, is it better? I must know. It's not.
Wait,
it's
let
not
me
better.
turn up my volume.
Oh my god! If this whole time was because your volume is low.
It does sound better now that I turned up my volume.
Oh no! Seriously, like you're just navigating this whole new world like a champion.
It's a whole new world.
A dazzling place I never knew. Is that right? It just came out of my childhood. Is that right? I don't know if that was right.
Ugh.
They call it a TIA, a transient ischemic accident. Just happened in my brain.
Words damaging.
I mean, there was some damage.
We need all of those brain cells.
Do we?
Nah.
I kind of checked out for a second and forgot what I was supposed to be talking about. So, a prion is just a protein. That's it. End of episode.
Okay. Done. We're done.
Alan farted.
I'm gonna fart. Fart. By the way, fart.
Dang, girl.
Fart. Farting.
Fart.
Farting. Gnaw on that subscribe button like it's your last brain. Join the horde. Mutant Hollow. Don't worry. We're only mostly dead.
Bye!
Bye!
You make a zombie sound? Can you make it louder?